Imagine buying your dream home, only to have a corrupt HOA try to steal it from you. They fined me, harassed me, and even demanded keys to my own gate, just so they could take a shortcut to the lake. But they had no idea who they were messing with, because when they pushed too far, I fought back. And trust me, by the end of this, the HOA was completely destroyed, their president was in handcuffs, and I got the ultimate revenge. You won't believe how it all went down. Stay tuned. The first morning's sunlight shimmered across the calm waters of the lake as Daniel Grayson sipped his coffee on the back porch of his dream home. Nestled at the edge of a sprawling lake, his property was a sanctuary, an escape from the noise and chaos of city life. He had moved here 2 years ago, drawn to the privacy, the vast open space, and most importantly, the direct lake access. The property had been his family for decades, passed down from his grandfather, who had built the first dock on the lake before any of the modern developments had even been conceived. The land was his. The gate securing access to the water was his, and he had no ties to any community organization or homeowners association. And that was exactly how he liked it. The only neighbors he had were a few properties down, people who kept to themselves. For the most part, he enjoyed the peace, the fishing trips, the quiet mornings with book in hand, and the occasional bonfire by the shore. It was perfect. That was, until the HOA arrived. At first, it was just talk. Daniel had heard murmurs of a newly formed homeowners association sprouting from a cluster of recently developed homes on the other side of the lake. These weren't the old-time residents like him. These were new suburban homeowners, people who had bought into one of those planned communities that had started creeping up near the lake in the past few years. He had seen the bright, shiny HOA brochures left at the town's general store, filled with promises of a well-maintained community, enhanced property values, and what made Daniel chuckle, uniform neighborhood aesthetics. Daniel had thought little of it. That was until he received the first letter. It came in an envelope marked Lakeview Homeowners Association, a name that meant nothing to him. Inside was a welcome notice, only he hadn't signed up for anything. It explained that the HOA had been officially formed and would be working to improve the living standards around the lake. Then came the kicker. The letter strongly encouraged him to join and outlined mandatory compliance guidelines for all homeowners in the area. He wasn't in their community. His house predated their entire development, and yet they were already acting as though they had authority over him. Daniel had laughed, crumpled the letter, and tossed it in the trash. He figured that was the end of it. He was dead wrong. A few weeks later, they knocked on his door. It was a Saturday morning, and Daniel had been halfway through setting up his fishing gear when he heard the sharp raps on his front door. When he opened it, he was met with a woman in a crisp blazer and a man in a polo shirt, both standing stiffly as though they were about to sell him something. "Good morning, Mr. Grayson," the woman began, her voice polished and professional. "I'm Linda Monroe, the president of the Lakeview Homeowners Association. This is Mark Reynolds, our community compliance officer." Daniel raised an eyebrow. Community compliance officer? This was already starting to sound ridiculous. "We want to discuss an important matter regarding the lake access," Linda continued. "No need," Daniel said, leaning against his doorframe. "I'm not a part of your HOA." Linda offered a tight smile. "We understand that. However, the Lakeview HOA has voted to establish a new access point to the lake, and unfortunately, your private gate stands in the way of that initiative." Daniel stared at them. "Excuse me." Mark stepped forward, clearing his throat. "We're asking for a copy of your gate key so that members of the HOA can access the lake without having to drive around to the public boat ramp." Daniel almost laughed at the audacity of the request. "Let me get this straight," he said, crossing his arms. "You want me to hand over my private property so that your HOA members can use my land as a shortcut?" Linda's smile never faltered. "It would be a community-friendly gesture, Mr. Grayson. After all, sharing resources benefits everyone." Daniel's response was immediate. "No." The smile on Linda's face twitched. "I'm sorry. The answer is no," Daniel repeated. "That gate is on my property. It stays locked." Mark sighed, flipping through a folder he had been carrying. "We were hoping to settle this amicably." But if you refuse, we may have to take further steps to ensure compliance with our community's standards." Daniel felt his patience snap. "I am not in your community," he said, voice firm. "You have no authority over me, and I don't give a damn about your standards. Now get off my property." He shut the door in their faces. He thought that would be the end of it. He was wrong again. The harassment began within a week. First, it was letters, dozens of them, each more aggressive than the last. Failure to comply may result in fines. Unauthorized structures, such as your lock gate, must be removed. You are in violation of Lakeview HOA accessibility guidelines. Daniel ignored them all. Then the petty complaints started. One day, he found a notice in the county claiming his dock was unsafe, something that had never been an issue in the decades his family had owned it. Another day, a noise complaint was filed against him. On a night when he hadn't even been home, it was clear what was happening. The HOA was trying to bully him into compliance. But Daniel wasn't the type to be bullied. Instead of backing down, he did the opposite. He reinforced his gate, added security cameras, and made sure his property was locked down tighter than ever. That was when things took a darker turn. Daniel returned home late one evening and noticed something was off. The gate, his reinforced, padlock gate, looked different. He parked his truck, grabbed a flashlight, and walked up to it. Then he saw it. The lock had been tampered with. Someone had tried to break in. A chill ran through him. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was trespassing. He stepped back and glanced toward the security camera he had installed. If someone had messed with his gate, the camera would have caught them. He marched inside, pulled up the footage, and what he saw made his blood boil. The video showed HOA members, under the cover of darkness, attempting to pick his lock. They weren't even hiding it. And that was the moment Daniel realized this wasn't just a dispute anymore. This was war. Daniel's heart pounded as he replayed the security footage. There they were, 3 figures, faces partially obscured by hoodies, crouched near his gate, their hands working feverishly at the lock. One of them, a stocky man with a familiar build, held what looked like bolt cutters, while another worked at the lock with what had to be a set of lockpicks. His stomach tightened. They had planned this. They weren't kids pulling a prank. These were grown adults. And not just any adults. Daniel recognized the shape of one of them, the way he moved, the way he gestured in frustration. It looked just like Mark Reynolds, the HOA's so-called compliance officer. The audacity! Daniel clenched his jaw. This wasn't just an attempted break-in. This was the HOA declaring war on his property rights. His mind raced. Do I call the cops? The evidence was right there, but a part of him hesitated. If they were bold enough to trespass once, they might try again, and next time, he'd be ready. Instead of changing the lock, Daniel had a better idea. He installed a second hidden camera, disguised within the trees, angled perfectly to catch anyone approaching the gate. Then he reinforced the lock, but this time he coated it with a UV reactive marking gel, completely invisible to the naked eye. But under a UV light, it would glow like neon. If the HOA tried again, Daniel would have undeniable proof, and he would personally make sure they paid for it. And then, just 3 nights later, they came back. Daniel had been waiting. He had set an alarm connected to his cameras, motion detection at the gate. It was nearly 2 a.m. when his phone vibrated against the nightstand. He didn't even hesitate. He grabbed his flashlight, his handgun, and the UV light before slipping out the back door, staying low in the shadows. As he approached the gate, he could hear them. "Hurry up, man," one whispered. "This lock's new." "Don't worry," another voice muttered, frustration seeping into his tone. "The copies should still work." Copies. Daniel's blood ran cold. They had made keys. His property wasn't just under attack. It was already compromised. He turned on the UV light and swept it toward the lock. And there it was, glowing smears of marking gel on the keyring in the man's hands. Daniel stepped forward, gun in hand, dropped the damn keys. The 2 intruders froze. One of them, the same stocky figure from the first break-in, stumbled back. The other one cursed, fumbled with the keys before dropping them onto the dirt. Daniel kept his gun low, but visible. He wasn't going to shoot unless they gave him a reason, but he sure as hell wasn't letting them go without answers. Who gave you those keys? His voice was ice. The stocky man swallowed hard. I don't know, man. We just... Try again. The second man bolted. Daniel could have chased him, but he already had what he needed. He stepped forward and picked up the keys. The UV smears were everywhere, proving they had used the same keys earlier when tampering with the lock. Bingo! The next morning, Daniel drove straight to the police station. Officer Mitchell, a longtime local and someone Daniel had known for years, took one look at the footage and the keys and immediately called for an official investigation. "This isn't just trespassing," Mitchell muttered. "They copied your keys? That's straight-up criminal." Daniel leaned forward. "That's not even the worst part. I recognize one of them." Mitchell sighed, rubbing his temple. "Let me guess. HOA." Daniel nodded. Mitchell clicked his pen. "All right, here's what we're going to do. I'll handle this properly, but we need to catch them red-handed." They set up a plan. The police would investigate, but Daniel would keep his gate untouched, baiting the HOA into thinking nothing had changed. Daniel didn't have to wait long. The very next afternoon, Linda Monroe, the HOA president, showed up at his front door. This time, she wasn't smiling. "Mr. Grayson," she began, voice clipped, "I received a rather distressing call from some of our members. Apparently you," she took a deep breath, "threatened them with a gun." Daniel didn't even blink. "I caught 2 men breaking onto my property. They had an illegal copy of my gate key." Linda's face paled for just a second, but she recovered quickly. "I find that hard to believe," she said smoothly. "No one from the HOA would do such a thing." Daniel smirked. "Oh, I figured you'd say that." And then he pulled out a printed screenshot of the security footage and held it up. Linda's eyes widened. "Gotcha." She tried to speak, to spin another lie, another excuse, but Daniel wasn't done. He pulled out the second set of photos, the UV-stained keys, glowing under the light. "Do these look familiar?" His voice was low, almost amused. Linda's mask finally cracked. She knew. She knew they were caught, and Daniel could see it in her eyes. But she wasn't ready to give up just yet. That evening, Daniel met with Officer Mitchell again. This time, the police took everything, footage, statements, the illegal key copies, and opened a full case against the HOA. The following week, officers knocked on Linda Monroe's door. She tried to talk her way out of it, tried to downplay the evidence, tried to say Daniel was hostile and unwilling to work with the community. None of it worked, because thanks to Daniel's patience, planning, and sheer stubbornness, the police had everything they needed. Formal charges were filed: trespassing, illegal key duplication, property tampering, conspiracy, and the HOA, they weren't ready for what came next. The HOA has been exposed, but they're not finished yet. As the legal battle begins, Daniel prepares for the final fight, one that will bring the entire corrupt HOA to its knees. Linda Monroe had spent years ruling the HOA with an iron fist, treating the neighborhood as her personal kingdom. But for the first time, she felt the walls closing in. News of the police investigation spread fast. Residents whispered. Some of them, especially those who had blindly followed the HOA's every rule, began to question her leadership. And Linda hated losing control. She called for an emergency HOA meeting at the clubhouse, gathering her loyal board members. The mood was tense. "This is getting out of hand," Mark Reynolds, the compliance officer, muttered. "The cops are serious about this, Linda. They have footage. They have proof." Linda's nails dug into the polished oak table. "We control the narrative," she hissed. "Daniel Grayson is a troublemaker. We make him look like the villain." "How?" another board member asked. "He has actual evidence against us." Linda's mind raced. "Then we make it disappear." A heavy silence fell over the room. Mark shifted uncomfortably. "Linda, you're not talking about. Find out where he keeps his copies," she snapped. "We need to get ahead of this before the entire HOA falls apart." Desperation made people reckless, and Linda was about to cross a line even she couldn't walk back from. Daniel hadn't slept much in the past week. Between the police reports, the legal proceedings, and watching the HOA scramble like a cornered animal, he knew they weren't done trying to retaliate. So when he heard a faint scraping sound at his back door around 3 a.m., he was already awake. He didn't move, didn't turn on a light. He just reached for his gun and silently checked the live feed from his cameras. There they were, two figures, dressed in black, working at his back door lock. Daniel's stomach twisted. This wasn't just petty harassment anymore. This was a felony. His first instinct was to call the cops, but something made him hesitate. Not yet. He had another idea. He activated the panic mode on his security system. Silent alarm straight to his phone, and the police. The intruders had no idea the cops were already on their way. Then Daniel picked up his floodlight and his shotgun. He stepped out onto his back porch, aiming the bright beam straight at the two trespassers. You have exactly 3 seconds to explain what the hell you're doing on my property. The intruders froze. One of them, the taller one, cursed and bolted. The second tripped over the garden bed, flailing as he tried to scramble away. Too late. A sharp, commanding voice cut through the night. Freeze! Hands in the air. Red and blue lights flashed across Daniel's yard as the police arrived just in time. The intruder who had fallen? Mark Reynolds, the HOA's compliance officer. And now, he was face down on Daniel's lawn, handcuffed and caught red-handed. Officer Mitchell stared at Mark Reynolds, shaking his head. Didn't think I'd see you like this, Mark. Mark said nothing. Daniel handed over the security footage from a break-in. Yet another nail in the HOA's coffin. By morning, the police had launched a full-scale investigation into the HOA's finances. And what they found? It was worse than anyone expected. Illegal fines, misused funds, unauthorized key copies, and the biggest discovery? Thousands of dollars mysteriously missing from the HOA's accounts. All signs pointed to Linda Monroe. And Daniel? He was going to make sure she didn't get away with it. When the police arrived at Linda's house, she acted surprised. "This is harassment," she shrieked. "I'm an upstanding member of this community." Officer Mitchell wasn't buying it. "We have your financial records, Linda." Her face blanched. "We have proof of fraudulent charges against homeowners. Fines that never went to the HOA account. Funds that mysteriously vanished." "That's—" she started, but Mitchell cut her off. "We also have evidence of your board members breaking into a resident's property on your orders." Linda's mouth snapped shut, and then the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. For the first time, Linda Monroe was powerless. The downfall of the corrupt HOA happened faster than anyone expected. With Linda arrested and multiple board members under investigation, the HOA crumbled. Residents were furious when they learned the truth. The years of fake fines, stolen money, and abuse of power. At the final HOA meeting, Daniel stood in the back, watching as the remaining board members tried to save face. It didn't work. One by one, the homeowners voted to dissolve the HOA. Forever. When the vote was cast, Daniel finally spoke. "You tried to take my home from me." His voice was calm, but the weight of everything that had happened hung in the air. He looked at the former board members, at the residents who had blindly followed them. "You lost." And with that, he walked away, free from the HOA's grip forever. A month later, Daniel stood at his gate, looking out at the lake beyond his property. For the first time in years, it felt like his land was truly his. No more HOA harassment. No more fines, threats, or legal trespassing. Just peace. He smiled to himself and stepped back inside. Finally, the war was over, and he had won. The HOA was dead, but Linda Monroe wasn't going down without a fight. Sitting in county jail, waiting for her trial, she was already plotting her way out. "I can fix this," she muttered to herself. "I can turn this around." Her lawyers had managed to delay the court proceedings, but she knew she was running out of time. Her name was all over the local news. HOA president arrested in corruption scandal. Homeowners revolt against corrupt HOA. Linda Monroe faces years in prison for fraud and conspiracy. Her influence was crumbling, but she had one last move. She contacted an old friend, a well-connected businessman with a reputation for making problems disappear. "I need to leave the state," she whispered into the jail phone. "I can pay you back once I'm out." The man hesitated. "Linda, you're toxic right now." "I made you," she hissed. "You owe me." Silence. "Then fine, but this is the last favor." Linda smirked. The wheels were in motion. Meanwhile, Daniel wasn't celebrating just yet. He had a gut feeling that Linda wasn't done. People like her never accept defeat. And then he got the call. It was from Detective Harris, the officer handling the case. "We have intel that Monroe might be planning an escape." Daniel felt his pulse spike. "How?" "An outside contact. We think she's trying to bribe her way out of the state." Daniel gritted his teeth. After everything she'd done, she was still trying to slip through the cracks? Not this time. The police needed proof of Linda's plan before they could intervene. That's when Daniel had an idea. He contacted an old friend, Kyle, a tech expert who owed him a favor. "I need a way to track a conversation in real time," Daniel explained. Kyle grinned. "I got you. Leave it to me." A few hours later, Daniel sat in his truck, parked outside the jail, listening to the live feed of Linda's phone call. "I want the money ready. I don't care what it takes. Just get me out of here." Bingo. Daniel immediately called Detective Harris. By the time Linda's escape ride arrived at the arranged meeting spot, the police were already waiting. The driver barely had time to react before his tires were spiked. And Linda? She was dragged out of the car, kicking and screaming. This time, there were no more deals, no more loopholes. Linda Monroe was officially a flight risk, which meant no bail, no easy escape. She was locked up for good. With Linda out of the picture, Daniel focused on one final task: uncovering every last piece of the HOA's corruption. He spent weeks going through documents, interviewing neighbors, and gathering every shady deal, every illegal fine, every stolen dollar. Then he published everything. An entire dossier of evidence. It hit local news stations like a bombshell. Homeowners who had been cheated for years came forward. Some of them filed lawsuits. Others demanded refunds. And a few? They wanted revenge. The former HOA board members tried to distance themselves, claiming they had no idea about Linda's illegal dealings. But Daniel had proof that they did, and the courts didn't buy their excuses. One by one, they faced financial ruin. 6 months later, Daniel stood at his gate once again. But this time, there was no anxiety, no fear. His land was his again. The HOA? Gone. The corrupt board members? Bankrupt, disgraced, or in jail. Linda Monroe? Still behind bars. For the first time in years, Daniel could breathe. He walked down to the lake, the cool breeze washing over him. No one could take this from him now. He had won, and in the end, it had all been worth it.